So it's now a week later, and I want to review a couple of the points of the design now that it's complete, just to include in your thought processes. One of the most important decisions that I made or I suggested and the client made was in the original design, we were going to have a small rock wall all along the top and a small rock wall all along the bottom. But one of the reasons I like doing both design and install is a series of events happened that led to quite an improvement in the design. We hit a Marin Municipal Water District pipe right here, and in the process decided we couldn't put a rock right over it. Now, we had no idea that it was there, not even sure exactly what it is. It's just a big 4-inch pipe with MMWD on it. And as a result, I placed this rock up here. Standing back and noticing how striking it was to have a higher corner, I then went through a process of feeling that in order to get the most return out of the rocks, because from my perspective, giving a flat bid, what I'm giving a flat bid is to place this amount of tonnage on the site. So while the contract said build a wall up here, build a low wall here, it really didn't change the cost any if I moved rocks from below down into this area here. Secondly, what I looked at is the fact that in the way that we had now planted the grasses or had designed the planting, very little of those rocks in the middle area would be seen. And so, but all of these rocks would be seen. And so you get a lot more mileage out of placing the rocks in this area. And so I brought it to the client's attention. As a result, I think we get about 60% more impact out of the rocks in this composition than if they were just in the first lower line. So I was quite pleased with that improvement, and it's one of the things that I like about design and install. So at no extra cost, the client's getting a lot more. The other thing that strikes me about this design, because we replaced rotting, leaning, pressure-treated timber walls, and we could have easily built with that, is that from an environmental perspective, these rocks did not cut down trees. They will not rot in 10 years. They will not require any stain. They will not be hauled to a landfill ever. And so on every level of the environment, rock is superior. But as many of the neighbors had commented, the old rock, wood walls looked extremely ugly. These look quite attractive. And so we actually did this grading and rock project without spending more than 25% over the cost of building the pressure-treated ugly, wood timbers. Plant choices are, of course, important. We've made this a little bit simpler than it would be if it were a back garden, because it's being viewed at roughly 15 miles an hour, primarily from cars, including the client driving up. And so you want to have things a little bit simpler, which is why I have the thyme and succulent ground cover over here, which also ties into another point, which is around sustaining the impact of the rocks. And to give you an example of what I mean, I'll take you over to a neighbor's garden, because often what happens with rock placements is that the rocks are too small and then planted next to plants that get too big, and you don't actually end up getting a lot of the impact of the rocks. And you can see that here, where right here you get a fair amount of impact on this rock, so that's great. As you come into around here, this rock is almost completely submerged. You get a good amount of impact here, the one behind, and back here starts to disappear. And so you want to plant plants that are quite low around rocks, particularly if they're a feature. And so that concludes this overview of this particular project.